This video tutorial is for adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. When you're working with fractions and you're adding or subtracting, you have to find a common denominator. Once you find the denominator, you keep it. So I'm just going to go over a few notes and then we're going to work a few samples out. When you add fractions with unlike denominators, first you need to make the denominators equal. So always know the top one is your numerator, your bottom one is your denominator. These have to be equal. Multiply each fraction by the other's denominator. That's the fastest way, and when you're working with small numbers, that works. But when you have larger numbers, remember that we told you to list the multiples of that number until you find the multiple that both can go into. Okay, I'll show you a little bit later on that. But the quickest way, and the numbers are small, it's easy enough just to multiply the denominators. So if I multiply 3 by 2, I'm going to get 6. Okay, so when I take the 1/2 and I multiply it by 3, again I'm going to get 3/6. My denominators will now be the same. And I simply multiplied these two numbers together, the denominators. Once you find it, then all you have to do is add them together. If you need to pause the video and read this a little bit more intense or read it over a couple times, that's fine. But just know we have to find the common denominator. That's your hardest step on the bigger fractions. But it's still not too hard. You can do it. So the same thing with subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. Okay? It's really these two numbers right here. You can multiply them together, or you can simply list their multiples. If we were to list multiples, you would have 5, and I always kind of like to make a T-chart so I can see the numbers a little bit more side by side. So you have 5, 10, 15, 20. On 4, you have 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. So when I list them, I see this is my least common denominator. So it still works by doing the 4 times 5, but when you come up with bigger numbers, it's going to be easier to list them side by side. And when the same number comes up on each side, you found your least common denominator. This is what I encourage. And once you find it, you keep it. You're going to subtract the top ones, but you're keeping your denominator. So I like to say finders keepers. In multiplying and dividing, you don't find them, you don't keep them. But adding and subtracting, once you find it, you're going to keep it. I'm going to work a few problems with you. These are not your homework problems, but I want you to understand the concept. And I'm going to start with the smaller numbers. I know your homework had large numbers on it. So we're going to have 1 and 2 fifths plus 3 and 6 sevenths. So now we have mixed numbers. First, we need to do the seed trick. Okay? That's 5 times 1 plus 2. So that would be 5, 6, 7. 7 fifths plus 3 times 7 plus 6 is going to be 21 plus 6 would be 27. Now then, I've got to find my common denominator. I could list my multiples out. and keep listing. Okay, but these numbers are small enough, I can say 5 times 7. So that's going to give me 35. And that's going to be my common denominator. How did we get from 7 to 35? We multiplied by 5. So whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. How did 5 get to 35? Multiply by 7. Whatever we do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So 7 times 7 is 49. 27 times 5 is 135. Now that I've found my common denominator, I'm going to keep it, and then I'm going to add straight across. Keep your denominator. So 149 plus 135 should be 184. This is improper. Now I have to change it back to a mixed number. So take 184, divide it by 35. 35 goes into that 5 times. Okay, and you're going to have 9 left over, so bring your remainder up here. Keep your denominator. Keep your denominator. Okay. So let's look at one that's subtracting. The hardest thing was finding the common denominator. And if you understand how to find it and then keep it, it's easy. Let's look at a subtraction. Let's do something a little bigger. 22 1/5 minus 6 2/14. So you're going to do the C trick. So 22 times 5 is 110 plus 1, 111 over 5. I haven't found my denominator, so you have to keep this denominator. You're just doing the C trick. That's all you're doing. Subtract 6 times 14, 84, plus 2 would be 86 over 14. So now we have to find the multiple of 5 and 14. Okay, and like I said, if you did the T-chart, you have 5 and you have 14. Okay, I pretty much know your multiples of 5, so let's just check and see if there's a smaller one that can go in before I hit 5 times 14. You have 14, 28, 42, 56, 70. And I don't. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 14 times 5 is going to give me 70. So 14 times 5, what you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. 5 times 14, 111 times 14. And that's to find your common denominator. Okay, so 70 is my common denominator. I'm going to write that down. 14 times 111 should give you 1,554. 86 times 5 should give you 430. And so now that you found it, keep it. And then you're going to subtract these. So I'm going to move my 70 over here because I'm going to keep it. Found it, keep it. Subtract those two. And then it's improper. So I have to change it back to a mixed number. So 1,025 24 divided by 70. And 70 will go into there one time. And bring down your 4. 7 goes into that 6 times. 4 left over. Now then, I want to keep it as a fraction. Take your remainder. Put it up here, 4 over 70. Keep your denominator. Okay? But this can be reduced. Okay? I'm writing crooked and going off the page, so I'm going to move it down here. 16 and 4/70. I can reduce this. If I divide by 2, I'm going to have 16 and 2/35. Okay? I hope this helped you a little bit. If you still have questions, we'll be in our rooms at 7:15 in the morning.